Ever feel like there's more below the surface? Like what we see, it's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to, the human mind?
Yeah,
That's where Jungian psychology comes in.
definitely.
So we're doing a deep dive into this today.
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from academic papers. We've got a chapter from his Red Book.
Okay,
Should be interesting.
absolutely. Jung, he went beyond just the surface. He explored the unconscious mind in a way that still is relevant today.
Yeah.
And instead of just focusing on, like observable facts, he emphasized personal experiences and interpreting things through different lenses.
Okay, so let's unpack that different lenses idea.
Yeah.
So it's like we all have our own perspectives that
Yeah.
shape how we see the world.
Exactly. Jung argued that like purely objective observation, it's impossible because we're always filtering that information through our own psyche. It's like wearing a pair of glasses that we can't take off.
And that subjective experience is key to understanding ourselves in a Jungian sense.
It's essential.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of his, I think, most intriguing concepts is active imagination.
Okay.
And it's not just passively observing our thoughts, it's about actively engaging with our unconscious through things like dream analysis. He saw dreams as a language the unconscious uses to communicate with us.
Dreams as a language.
Yeah.
So not just random images floating around. There's an actual meaning in those late night narratives.
Precisely. And just like any language, dreams use symbols and metaphors.
Okay.
Think of it as deciphering a coded message from your own mind. The characters on the stage, often they're representations of our psychological complexes.
Complexes, everyone's heard that.
Right.
What do they actually mean?
Imagine them as these ingrained patterns of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, often rooted in our past, and they influence us unconsciously. A great example Jung used is the parental complex.
Okay.
Let's say someone had a really overbearing, tyrant-like father growing up.
I see where you're going with this.
Right.
Yeah.
That person might unconsciously rebel against authority figures throughout their life, constantly butting heads. It's like they're still grappling with that early experience of control, but it's playing out in their relationships and interactions on a subconscious level.
That's really powerful illustration of how deeply these complexes can impact us. And this all ties into like his famous archetypes, like the persona, the shadow, the anima, animus. It's like they're all part of this like intricate psychological drama playing out within us.
You've hit the nail on the head. Think of archetypes as these universal recurring patterns of behavior, characters that we all share in the human story.
Yeah.
The persona, for example, is the mask that we wear for the world, shaped by societal expectations. It's how we fit in.
So if the persona is the mask, what happens to all those parts of ourselves that don't quite fit that image, the image we're presenting?
That's where the shadow comes into play.
Yeah.
It's the storehouse for all those aspects that we deem unacceptable or undesirable, those parts that we try to hide, even from ourselves.
So our hidden dark side.
Not necessarily dark, but definitely unacknowledged.
Okay.
And here's the thing, the shadow, it isn't inherently bad. It's just a part of us. In fact, it can be a wellspring of creativity if we learn to integrate it in a healthy way.
Okay. This is where it gets really interesting for me. Anima animus. It's one of those concepts that's both mysterious and deeply personal.
It is a fascinating one. The anima is the unconscious feminine aspect present in men, while the animus is the unconscious masculine aspect in women. They represent this inner opposite gender image we all carry within us.
Well, hold on. So you're saying men have a feminine side, women have a masculine side. These are active forces within our unconscious minds.
You got it. And they play a huge role in our relationships, how we perceive the opposite gender, how we love even.
Wow.
But we'll dive deeper into that a bit later.
Okay.
For now, just remember they're powerful players in our inner world.
I'm already sensing a theme here. Jungian psychology is all about exploring those hidden recesses of ourselves,
Yes.
those shadow sides, those opposite gender energies, and integrating them into a more complete sense of self.
You're picking up what Jung was putting down.
Okay.
He called this journey of integration individuation. And it's something we'll explore in more depth as we go along.
It's like we're cracking a code, our own internal code.
Yeah.
We talked about, these hidden players, the persona, the shadow, anima, animus.
Right.
But how do they all like come together in this quest for what he called individuation?
Individuation, that's a fascinating concept.
Mhm.
And it's not about like achieving some perfect final version of ourselves,
right.
but rather like a continuous process of becoming, more aware, more whole.
Mm.
And you're right, those archetypes, they're key players in this inner journey.
You mentioned earlier that the anima and animus play like a huge role in our relationships.
Right.
And I'm really curious to unpack that a bit more, especially what you're saying about like men being afraid of their feelings, how that relates to the anima.
It's a common thread, right?
Yeah.
And it ties into those different lenses that, we talked about earlier.
Right.
Society often reinforces this idea that, men should be stoic, rational,
Mm-hmm.
keeping their emotions in check. But those, repressed feelings, they don't just vanish, they become part of the shadow.
Okay, so we're shoving those like unmanly emotions into the shadow, but how does that involve the anima?
Well, the anima, it embodies that feminine principle, right?
Mm.
Which includes things like emotional sensitivity, intuition, um, a capacity for deep feeling. So when a man represses those qualities in himself, he's essentially pushing them onto his anima,
Yeah.
often distorting his view of women in the process.
Oh, so instead of seeing those qualities as valuable parts of himself, he's projecting them out onto women, potentially leading to like misunderstandings and conflict and all that.
Exactly. He might even be drawn to women who embody those repressed qualities, seeking to reconnect with those disowned parts of himself. But because it's unconscious, it often plays out in messy ways.
This reminds me of what we were talking about, like the shadow not being inherently bad.
Right.
It's about integration,
Integration.
not elimination.
Absolutely. And that's where things get really interesting with the anima and animus.
Mm-hmm.
Jung believed that encountering these archetypes, like really grappling with them, is crucial for individuation. He even said that every psychological process of transformation begins with the pure eternus, another archetype that represents our unrealized potential.
There's that transformation idea again.
There it is.
It's like these archetypes are guideposts challenging us to become more conscious, more whole.
Precisely. Think of it this way. The pure eternus can represent a certain fear of commitment, a resistance to responsibility. But it also carries the seeds of creativity and a yearning for something more. It's about finding that balance, channeling that energy into a meaningful life.
He actually saw work as a path to freedom for the puerpuelo, which I thought was fascinating.
Hmm.
Kind of counterintuitive, you know?
It might seem counterintuitive, but Jung saw it as a way to bring those, creative impulses into the real world, to take responsibility, to contribute something meaningful.
Yeah.
He believed that when we engage in work that aligns with our purpose, it helps us to integrate those often disowned aspects of ourselves, like the puerpuela, leading to greater fulfillment and freedom.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It's not about just slaving away at any old job.
Right.
It's about finding something that resonates
Yeah.
with our deeper selves.
Exactly,
Something that
yeah.
calls to those hidden parts.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where our passions and skills intersect with the needs of the world.
Okay.
And speaking of understanding ourselves better, let's circle back to the language of dreams. We touched on it, but it feels crucial to understanding these deeper aspects of ourselves.
Yeah. He had so much to say about dreams, even comparing learning to interpret them to like learning a new language. You shared that quote where he talks about this symbolic and metaphorical language of the unconscious.
It's a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
Because dreams, they don't speak in the literal language of our waking lives.
Right.
It's about recognizing that a figure in a dream, for example, might represent a part of ourselves or a feeling rather than like a literal person.
So how do we begin to decode those messages? It can feel overwhelming.
Yeah. Start by paying close attention. What are the recurring themes? What emotions do certain dream images evoke in you? Don't dismiss anything as just a dream. Jung believed that even those fleeting, seemingly insignificant dreams can hold profound, personal meaning.
This makes me think about like recurring dreams that a lot of people have.
Right?
Could that be our complexes trying to get our attention?
Exactly. Complexes are often those architects of dreams and every symptom, as Jung put it. Let's say someone constantly dreams of being chased. It could be their shadow, full of those denied impulses trying to make itself known, urging integration.
Okay.
Or it could relate to like a fear of confrontation or responsibility that keeps showing up in their waking life too.
So paying attention to our dreams could be like having like a direct line to our unconscious,
Yeah.
like offering clues about what we might need to address
Yeah.
in our waking lives. It's like therapy, but we're both the therapist and the patient.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And while dream interpretation is deeply personal, Jung also believed that there are some universal symbols and archetypes that appear in dreams across cultures and time periods.
Like like a collective unconscious that we're all tapping into.
Exactly. And that's where things get really fascinating.
This collective unconscious, it's really blowing my mind, honestly. It's like we're all connected on some like deep subconscious level,
Right.
sharing these like universal archetypes and symbols.
It's a powerful concept, and it speaks to this, profound interconnectedness that Jung believed was so fundamental to, to the human experience.
Yeah.
But before we get too lost in the collective unconscious, let's bring it back to the individual.
Okay.
Remember those psychological types that we kind of touched on?
Right. It feels like a good time to unpack those. We're unique in so many ways.
They are.
But maybe these types can kind of help explain why we approach the world so differently.
Exactly. Jung identified four primary functions:
Okay.
sensation, intuition, feeling, and thinking.
Okay. Got it.
And we each have a dominant function that influences how we perceive and process information.
So it's like having a preferred mode of operating.
Precisely. Someone with a dominant sensing function is grounded in the present moment, focused on concrete details, practical realities. They're the what-is folks.
That makes sense. What about intuition then?
Intuitive types are all about possibilities, the big picture. They're the what-if thinkers, drawn to abstract concepts and future possibilities.
Okay. So sensing is about the details, intuition is about the big picture. What about feeling and thinking?
So those relate to how we make decisions. Thinking types are guided by logic and an objective analysis. They
Okay.
value fairness and strive for, impartial judgment.
So they're the ones who are making the pro and con list for every decision, big or small.
Exactly. And then we have the feeling types. They
Mhm.
prioritize values and the impact that their decisions have on others.
Okay.
Harmony and understanding are paramount to them.
Okay. So four functions: sensing, intuition, feeling, thinking.
Right.
But you also mentioned introversion and extroversion.
Ah, yes.
How do those fit in?
So each of those functions can be expressed in either an introverted way or an extroverted way. And it's about where we direct our energy
Mm.
inwards towards our own, thoughts and feelings, or outwards, engaging with that external world.
So it's not just about like being a social butterfly or like a wallflower. It's
Right.
it's how our dominant function expresses itself.
Exactly. An introverted feeling type, for example, might have like a rich inner world of emotions and values, but they may express them more subtly through, meaningful connections rather than like grand gestures.
This is giving me so much to think about. It's like a new language
Yeah.
for understanding myself and the people around me.
It's definitely a helpful framework. And speaking of frameworks and connections, we've been circling around this idea of wholeness and integration.
Right.
Let's kind of tie it all together by looking at Jung's own journey as documented in his Red Book.
Yeah, his own like journey through these concepts makes him feel so much more tangible.
Right.
What can you tell us about the Red Book? What was he looking at there?
It's a fascinating glimpse into his own process of individuation.
Mm-hmm.
From 1914 to 1930, he meticulously recorded his dreams, fantasies, what he called active imaginations in this book. It wasn't meant for public consumption.
Right.
But thankfully it's available to us now.
So we kind of get a front row seat to his inner world,
Exactly.
like his encounters with, these archetypes and the unconscious and all that.
Precisely. And it wasn't always a smooth or comfortable journey. He even used the term divine madness to describe some of the experiences he had while confronting these raw primal forces within himself.
That sounds intense,
Yeah.
but also incredibly courageous
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
willing to face those, maybe like darker, more challenging aspects of himself.
Exactly. And that's what Jung emphasized. Individuation isn't about achieving some perfect state of being.
Right.
It's about acknowledging and integrating all parts of ourselves, the light and the shadow, the masculine and the feminine.
He even challenged that idea of like the myth of being cured, right?
Absolutely.
It's a process, not a destination.
It is. And a process that requires us to be active participants.
Yeah.
He wasn't just about analyzing dreams on a couch.
Right.
He saw action in the real world, engaging with our passions, our purpose, as crucial for individuation.
That idea of, work as a path to freedom for the poor Puella,
Yeah.
really it stuck with me. It's
Yeah.
about channeling that creative energy into something meaningful.
It is. And Jung believed that this journey of individuation, this process of becoming more whole, is ultimately what leads to a more fulfilling and authentic life.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive,
Right.
from like those different lenses at the beginning to
Yeah.
the complexities of the shadow and dreams,
Yeah.
psychological types, even a glimpse into his own Red Book journey.
It's quite a lot.
It's been a ride.
It has. And I hope it's sparked a curiosity in you to
Yeah.
keep exploring these ideas, to keep asking those big questions about yourself and your place in the world.
It definitely has. And for anyone listening who's ready to do some more of their own exploration, we've got a bunch of additional resources linked in the show notes. But before we go, one last thought to leave you with. If you were to meet your own shadow face to face, what would it look like? And what would it say to you? Until next time, keep diving deep.